Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Beach Walk Blog. Today's Beach Walk Blog is all about, is it weak or is it overworking? This is something that I see a lot. I'm injured. What can I do to strengthen the area? Now, I want you to think, why am I injured? That's always the first thing that you've got to go to, is why is this happening? Now, what happens when you run is that over a period of time, your muscles get fatigued, produce less force. Areas that are having to do more work than others will gradually get fatigued and they will get overloaded and probably get to a point where they're getting stressed out, and that's what's causing or contributing to the pain that you're having or the injury that you're having. So if I said to you that every time your foot lands, your Achilles tendon has to stretch, your soleus muscle has to stretch. This is in the calf region, so the lower leg. The soleus has to stretch. The gastroc pulls or gets lengthened to break the femur from going forwards as the knee travels forwards. The gastroc is controlling that femur from traveling too far forwards. And then the hamstrings are pulling the leg backwards. And what do we hear from most runners when they're injured is, oh, I've got this hamstring issue, I've got this calf issue, I've got this Achilles issue, I've got this plantar fascia issue. So if you do too much too soon, you're overloading those tissues, you're overloading those muscles, you're overloading that fascia. It's getting stretched out too much, because as you run more and more and more, and you take it into that point of fatigue, what happens is that those muscles get tired. They don't get weak. What they do is they get fatigued. So they produce less force because they're getting fatigued. And then either the stretching that's occurring when you run becomes too much for the fascia to handle, and it starts to tear, or it starts to increase the load on the muscles, because the muscles then have to pick up the slack, but they can't because they're fatigued. And then what you're suffering, or what you're thinking is weakness, is actually just overload, because you can't work through overload. It's overload. You can't work through that. You're getting to a point where it's fatigued, and therefore it can't do what it was supposed to do, or what it was doing earlier on in the run. So the answer is not to try and strengthen that area, because the chances are you're going to do the wrong thing. Chances are you're going to try and do squats. And as we know, because remember, this is from the literature, the research, squats don't strengthen the hamstrings. They actually don't really use the hamstrings very much. They actually favour the glute and the quad. So you put yourself into an even worse situation, because the muscle that you thought you were strengthening, you're not. And you're actually strengthening other muscles which structurally change how you move, favouring the quads, favouring the glutes into external rotation, therefore overwhelms the whole scenario of movement in running. And then you're now down that rabbit hole of, I'm now suffering repeated injury bouts. Even though I am technically stronger, I'm suffering repeated bouts of injury. Just got to show you this house. How beautiful is that? Anyway, I digress. So you're in this situation where, you know, you've got an injury, and now you're saying, oh, I've got to strengthen this area, but the choice of exercise you use to strengthen it is the wrong one, which therefore puts you into this perpetual cycle of doing the wrong thing, still being injured. And now you're starting to question, hopefully, the validity of the exercise choice that you're making, or maybe not just the exercise choice, but the actual person who's telling you that exercise is going to work for you but isn't. So you're injured, you think it's because it's weak, the area is weak, It's actually probably because it's overworking being caused by something else, causing it to overwork. Okay, so you've now chosen the wrong exercise that doesn't do what you thought it did, and you're into this perpetual loop cycle of injured, wrong exercise. Don't get the result. Back to running because the pain's gone down. Injured. Back to the same exercise that you did before because you think it helped, but it actually didn't. It was just the rest time that got you the decrease in pain level. So therefore you're now again going to repeat the same cycle because you think it helped before, but it actually didn't. Now, something I said to somebody the other day was, a lot of the time we actually get the result that we get in spite of the training that we do, not because of the training we do. And this is something where I've talked before about pro athletes, pro runners doing things that I suggest you don't. People say, well, but they're pro athletes, then therefore that's helping them become better. Now I'm going to flip that, and I'm going to use that term that I just used, which is a lot of athletes are as good as they are in spite of the training that they do. Meaning that they could even be better. They could even be better than they are if they didn't do certain things. That's an interesting thought, isn't it? So we started off this conversation talking about, am I weak, or am I overusing the tissues that are getting injured? They're most people think they're obviously weak because they're getting injured. I'm saying they're being overused, and therefore making them stronger doesn't change the fact that they're still going to be overused, because you have to change your training mentality into thinking that, well, if I make them stronger, it still doesn't change the reason that they're overwhelmed in the first place, and then you're still in this cycle. Now, that mindset approach that I'm talking about there is what kind of like permeates into the thinking that what elite athletes do is always the best thing, and also what elite athletes do for their training is what we should be doing for our training. And I've talked about this a little bit in previous beach walk vlogs, that some of these elite athletes, yeah, they might do some planks, they might do some stretching, they might do some static stretching, they might, but we know that it isn't helping them. We know it's not helping them. And what people do is they go, oh, so this athlete's doing this, I need to do that because they're better than me, and in order to be like them, I must do what they're doing. But what you don't see is the 125 plus miles that they're running each week, and you don't do that. So what you do is you latch on to the things that you can do, like the planks, like the squats, and you think, oh, I need to push as hard as I can with my squats and my planks, whereas in reality the squats that most of these pro runners, and we're talking marathon runners, 10k runners, etc., are doing are really not heavy squats. Like, I mean, really not heavy. And I'm talking about these elite triathletes as well. They're not heavy squats. They're doing, they're actually doing really quite light squats. The successful ones are doing these quite light squats. And I know that some people are going to say, oh, but the research says that squats help runners become more economical. Now, I'll tell you what the research says. And when I say it to you, you'll actually probably think again. The research states that highly trained runners may get an improvement in their running economy from doing some squats. Now, there's another research study which also shows that these same runners doing quarter depth squats got a much better outcome in their running economy than runners doing full depth squats. Wow, isn't that crazy? Well, no, it isn't. Because here's the reason why. Because the rules of strength and conditioning the rules of strength training that every single strength coach and physical therapist should know and should quote is that range of motion specificity is a part of the rules of strength and conditioning. So if running takes me to a quarter squat depth, which it pretty much does, when I run, I hit the ground, I'm already squatted. I'm not squatting, I'm squatted. So when I hit the ground and I'm already in a quarter depth squat, I might go down a fraction more. I might hit the ground in an 1/8 depth squat and go down to a quarter depth squat. But what I'm doing is I'm staying at a specific squat depth throughout my stance phase of gait. So if we refer to the rules of strength and conditioning, which state range of motion specificity, then obviously when we then go to the research study, it proves that point unequivocally. I'm bound to get a better outcome with my running if I focus on isometric 1/4 depth squats. And funnily enough, that's what we do in the sling method. In week 9 of the Runner's Rehab and the Basic 8 course, that's exactly what we do. We focus on that specific range of motion that we go down to in our stance phase of gait, which is around about a quarter depth squat. So there we go. Right, so this change of mindset that I want you to have is not just saying, oh, elite athletes or elite runners do squats. It's what squats do they do, and is it applicable to me? Are you an elite runner? No. Are you running 125 plus miles a week? No. Is your VO2 max in the 65 plus range? No. Is your movement at a point where you are injury free? No. Do I have to carry on? There was 4 points that say don't do squats to become a better runner, right? There's other research out there that's all in my my ebook that you get when you purchase the 9-week course, which that research shows you training my glutes does not transfer over to running. Okay, so hip thrusters, the hip thrusters that traditional strength training does, which are laying on your back, lifting your hips up, they do not transfer over to running. They do not give you an improvement in your running. Okay, so these are all the things that we follow in the sling method, and it's the first one. I'm going to go back to mindset change. Squatting does not make you a better runner. It doesn't make you move better. It's not specific to the running gait action whatsoever, period. And your mindset needs to change. Okay, so let's go way back to the start again. Am I injured? I'm injured. I'm not. This is you. You're injured. Is it weak? Probably not. Is it overworking? Probably yes. Why is it overworking? Because your gait cycle movement is not efficient. It's not happening. It's not functioning well. You could say your gait cycle action, your running action, is dysfunctional. Okay, so what you got to do then is you got to say, okay, I'm injured in running. I need to fix my running by fixing the running movement, by making my running movement better. Okay, I need to fix my running movement by making the running movement better. What doesn't make your running movement better? Squatting, planking. Okay, those movements do not make your running movement better because they're not the running movement. They're not training the running movement. So mindset shift, okay? Mindset shift. I want you to get out of thinking, firstly, every exercise is the same. Okay, I want you to start thinking specifically, okay? Because strengthening legs, there's a ton of muscles in your legs. And if you do the wrong exercise, you will be strengthening the wrong thing, and in strengthening the wrong thing, you are actually not strengthening the correct thing. Second mindset shift I want you to think is, stop thinking it's weak, start realizing it's overloaded, and if you don't change the reason why it's overloaded, then you won't change you won't change the cycle that you're in, because what you'll do is you'll continue to move badly and move in a dysfunctional pattern, and you'll continue to send excess load to the wrong place, regardless of how strong you apparently make that area. Okay, third mindset shift I want you to make is I want you to understand that coordination of the entire gait cycle movement, which we train in the Runner's Rehab and the Basic 8, the entire gait cycle movement is a coordinated movement. And just think of something really simple like picking up a cup of coffee. Okay, picking up a hot cup of coffee, let's say that, a very hot cup of coffee. Now you know that when you pick up your cup of coffee, it's hot. So the first thing you do is you bring it to your mouth really slowly, because you don't want to burn yourself. You don't want to burn yourself, right? So you do it slowly, and then you press your lips together and you go, and you sip it. And when you sip it, you're taking in a little bit of fluid, hot coffee. Because if you take in too much, it will burn you, because you can't cool it down. Right? So all of these things are coordinated. So you pick up the coffee cup, you bend your elbow, you flex your shoulder to bring the cup up to your mouth. You press your lips together, you bring the cup to your lips, then you tilt it and you sip, right? This is all coordinated. Okay? It's all coordinated, and you've practiced it. You practiced it and it became functional, right? But if you give that coffee cup to a baby, what are the first thing they're going to do is they're going to drop it. Or imagine teaching a child how to catch. They're uncoordinated. Their hand-eye coordination is not where it needs to be. Their reactions, their reactivity, their responses are not where it needs to be yet. They're uncoordinated, so they don't catch the ball, right? This is coordination, and coordination is absolutely fundamental to getting better at a movement. Because if you can't coordinate that movement, it will be dysfunctional. It's dysfunctional on every level. So from the moment you start learning it, it's dysfunctional, and you create that function by practicing it. Again, go back to the child, back to the baby. Baby becomes toddler, toddler becomes stander, stander falls because they can't coordinate standing. They haven't got that coordinative function yet of standing. So then eventually they learn, I wobble around a few times, and then I get to, I can stand up now. And then they go plonk and they fall. As soon as they take their first step, they fall over because they can't coordinate the landing. So then their brain very quickly learns, oh crap, if I keep falling over, that's going to hurt. So what I need to do is I need to isometrically contract my muscles to stop me from face planting every time I take a step. Then we get into these contralateral reflexes, these stumble reflex, the contralateral extensor reflex. We get all these reflexes that come into play. There's no need for those reflexes to be in play when you're laying on your back in a cot when you're 2 months old. There's no need for those reflexes. So we don't get them until we need them. Now, you go through your life, and again, this is part of the mindset shift that I'm talking about here. You go through your life and you don't practice running. You don't do it very often, and then eventually you stop because you're a seated sedentary human who now becomes better at looking and functioning like a chair. And your posture changes, your head comes forwards, your shoulders round, all of these postural adaptations, your hips become flexed, your muscles become shortened. All of these things happen, which basically makes you a dysfunctional runner, a dysfunctional walker, right? Now, why are you then going to a gym and getting better at doing planks, or trying to get better at doing planks and squats and shoulder presses and lat pulls and chin-ups and bicep curls and all these things? Because none of them are working on the coordination of your gait cycle. There's the problem. See, there's the problem. There's the mindset shift that you need to make. Running isn't easy. Running is not easy. And I'll tell you how you can recognize, and you can totally agree with me on this. Running isn't easy, because if it was, you wouldn't be injured. Haha, right? If it was easy, why are you injured? You need to stop thinking of running being an easy thing, and you need to start thinking of it as the most complex human movement that there is, because it is the most complex human movement that there is, right? So stop thinking that running is easy and all the other things in the gym are going to benefit your running, because they're not. We just talked about the rules of strength and conditioning and the squat depth that you train either helping or not helping, and in fact possibly even, probably even, actually definitely hindering your running ability, because it does, because it's not the movement of running, right? So now if that, in that simplistic format, that I can do the same movement but to a different range of motion, i.e. a different depth, if something that simple actually doesn't help my running, how on earth do you think a shoulder press, a lat pull, a bicep curl, a deadlift, a hip thruster, a shoulder bridge, basically anything else that you can think of, how is that going to benefit your running? If just the simple squat to the wrong depth doesn't benefit your running, how are all those other things going to benefit your running? They're not. They're absolutely not. So stop doing them to become a functional runner. When I say functional, I mean uninjured, right? I mean, it's just kind of fundamental obviousness, really, isn't it? I want to get better at this, I got to do this, but I can't do this just by doing it because I'm uncoordinated, because my foot flicks out, or because I take a gigantic stride and I'm not got a good stride pattern, right? So I've got to fix all those things. But doing other things doesn't fix those things. Doesn't fix those things that are dysfunctional, that are broken, right? The code. Running is a code in your brain. This comes after this, comes after this, comes after this, comes after this. It's a coordinated action, it's a code. So if the code is broken, bits of code are in the wrong place, or even bits of code that should be there don't even exist, how are you going to get them back? By not working on the actual code. It's like a programmer saying, you know, a computer programmer going, oh, well, it doesn't work, let's just throw it out the window, or let's try something different. No, don't try something different. Put the thing in there that's missing. Recode the bit that's missing, put it back in and fix it, and then it will be functional again, right? It's a bit like when your computer doesn't find the printer, so you switch it off and switch it back on again, and it goes blah 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 blah. Oh yeah, there it is, I find it now, because the code was kind of like a bit messed up and it got a bit wrong. But when you reboot your computer, right, you recode, you get all the code back in the right place again. So you learn how to, your computer goes, oh yeah, it's all good now. Same thing with your brain. What you need to do is you need to recode the system so that it all works again. And when you do that, that is the mindset shift that I want you to make. Get out of this thinking that running is easy. Because like I said, if it was easy, you wouldn't be injured, and 80% of runners in the world every year wouldn't be injured. If it was that easy, none of you would be injured. And doing all of the things that you're already doing would be making you better at running, but it just doesn't work that way. You've got to have that mindset shift. And that's the mindset shift that I'm giving you, that I'm showing you with the sling method. Because movement is not in straight lines. The body rotates. There's all these levers that work together, all these lever actions, these rotations, these pivots that work together. And if you're not coordinating all of these pivot points and levers and all sorts, then you're just not going to be coordinating the movement correctly, and therefore you get overload to certain places, certain areas of your body. And if you're getting overload to those places and to those tissues in the body, simply just making something randomly stronger, just totally, I just do some squats because, you know, people who do squats are strong. Yeah, but they're not, that's not the running movement. And you've got to follow the first part, which is coordination of the movement is what helps the movement itself to become stronger. Because if I'm not coordinating the movement, right, then I'm not strengthening the movement. You've got to do the movement that you want to be stronger in order to strengthen the movement that you want to be stronger at, right? It's like picking up trying to make my biceps stronger by training my pecs or my legs. It's like there's different movements that train different muscles and different areas of the body, and like I said, coordination. All right, so that's the mindset shift that I want you to kind of think about. It's all been about mindset shifts and thinking differently, thinking a little bit differently to get a different outcome. And as I keep saying, if you do what you always did, you will get what you always got. You've got to change the mindset. Can't change anything until you change that. First thing you got to do, recognize that there's a problem and you ain't fixing it with your current approach. Have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye.